So this video is on solving quadratic equations, and we're going to try two methods. The first method is by factoring, and then we will look at solving by graphing. Okay, so if you recall, graphing, we went through the process of a few steps. Okay, so if we are looking at, I'll get my drawing symbol up here so I can draw. So if we are factoring this first problem, our first step was to set up two sets of parentheses. Then next we were to split the first term. Next we decided on our signs. If this last one was a plus, that meant the signs were the same, and they were the same as the first symbol, so they're both plus. So we want to find out what multiplies to give us 3, and when we add we get 4. Okay, so 1 and 3 are our factors. Now, this is what we've done so far. Well, now we're going to take it one step further. We're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So, to solve by factoring, we're first going to go through the process of factoring it. And then we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Okay? So those are our steps for factoring, or solving by factoring. Now, if I take each of these factors and put it equal to 0, I'm going to solve for the x. I got one variable, I'm going to solve for that variable. So this plus 1 has to be moved to the other side by subtracting it. So one of my x's is -1. I'm going to do the same thing on this other one. I'm going to subtract that 3. So that means my other x value is a -3. So you just solved this quadratic equation, and you did it by factoring. Okay? So I want to just look at this next one. We're going to set up two parentheses, split the first term. Signs are the same, but both plus. Now I need terms that multiply to give us 24, but when I add them, I get 11. So 8 and 3 are my two factors. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0, and then I'm going to solve them for x. So one of my x's is -8. The other x is a -3. Okay, so solving by factoring. Let's look at this one. We're going to set up our two parentheses. We're going to split the first term, and we're going to decide on our signs. Now this one has a negative at the end. That means our signs are different. And the biggest number, whichever factor I have, will be a negative. That's the largest number. Okay? So let's just think of two things that multiply to give us 5. But if we were to subtract them, we would get 1. So two things multiply to give us 20. And if we subtract, we get 1. Now, I need a -1. So that means my biggest number is going to have to be the 5. It's the negative. So +4 minus 5 gives you a -1. Then we're going to set each of these factors equal to 0, and we're going to solve for x. So here x is -4. I'm going to add 5 to move it, and this one says x is +5. So those are the solutions. All right, so for factoring, to solve by factoring, you need to show this process. Factor a polynomial, then set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Okay? Now, I wanted to show you these two because we can factor them as well. When we first started factoring, we talked about factoring a GCF. Okay? So if you look at this first expression, it has a GCF. The GCF is an X. So remember how we did GCF. We put the GCF on the outside and we divided each term by the GCF. So we would have an X on the outside, that is our GCF, and then we have X minus 8 left over. We're going to do the same thing we did a while ago. We're going to take each of these factors and put them equal to 0, and we're going to solve them. Now my GCF gave me a value of 0 for X, and then the other factor gave me a value of 8 for X. Okay? Now let's try the one next to it. Determine what the GCF is. It's a 3x, so that means we're going to divide both of these by 3x. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. X squared divided by x1 is an x. 15 divided by 3 is 5, and x divided by x cancels out the x. Okay, so these are our two factors. We're going to take each factor and we're going to put it equal to 0, and we're going to solve it. Now if I divide 0 by 3, I still get 0. So that's one of my values. And then I'm going to move this 5 over by subtracting it, which makes this x a negative 5. Okay? So we can solve by factoring. Now let's talk about the solve by graphing. Okay? So we're going to make an adjustment here, and we're going to go to Desmos, and we're going to graph this. Okay? So this is my equation. I'm going to go into Desmos, and I'm going to see if I can enlarge this or move this slide. Okay, so maybe we can get a better picture. Okay, so my equation says 3x to the square plus 9x minus 12. Okay, now this graph looks a little bit different. Okay, it's not a straight line. It's more of a U. You see how it turns and goes the other way, right? Now, if we are solving by graphing, we want to see where does it cross X. Okay, so I want you to notice when I put this equation in, the graph gave me a gray dot where it crosses the x-axis. So my solution is -4, that is the x value, and +1. If I factored it and solved it, I would get the same answer. Okay? So let's see if it'll let me. If I take out a 3, that's a GCF, I get this. Okay? Now, 3 equals 0 is not an answer. So that's not even part of my answer. But I'm going to factor this one. Different signs, a plus and a minus, and multiply to give me 4, but if I subtract, I get 3. And I need a +3. So that's going to be +4 minus 1 gives me 3. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0, and I'm going to solve for x. Okay, so we're going to subtract the 4. So one of my x's should be -4, and it was. Then I'm going to add this 1 to move it. That makes my other x a +1, and it was. All right? So you can do it by graphing or you can do it by factoring. You should get exactly the same answer. Okay? So we're going to try another one. I'm going to erase all this. Okay. And then we're going to try another equation. All right. Let's see. Let's go on here. It won't let me. Okay, so we're going to put another equation in. This time I'm going to put in 5x squared minus 20x minus 60. Now that's big numbers, and you see that I can't see all of my graph, but I do see that it crosses x. You see that gray dot? That gray dot. So my x values are -2 and +6. That is the solution to this polynomial. Okay, we're going to try one more. So let's do 2x squared plus 3x minus 5. Okay, you see the gray dots? These are my x values. This one is -2.5. This one is 1. Okay, so Desmos does a really good job of graphing these polynomials and indicating where they cross the x-axis. So we can factor to solve, and you're going to have to do some of those. Then we can also graph it to solve. Remember, the solution is where it crosses the x-axis. These are also called the zeros of the function. Okay, so good luck.